you.
The Business Developers Network features innovative concepts that impact top and bottom lines. Reimagining a budget line item from being an expense to something that creates value is truly innovative. You'll want to listen to this episode of Business Developers Network to learn how to optimize an expense line item to become an opportunity for creating value. Hello, this is Artie Ruderman, Business Developers Network Forum, where business leaders exchange innovative concepts for developing business. Business development can be any activity that generates value, increases top and bottom lines, or enhances intangible assets. Our guest today is from Data Visualization Intelligence, an acronym DVI. You will want to listen to learn how data visual intelligence has reimagined travel and expenses to not only contain, but reduce them and creates value for them. We all know that data collection, organization, visualization provide insight to make a successful business decision. Our guest, Bruce Kopkin, will explain how DVI's proprietary data analysis can deliver actionable insight that will decrease travel-related expenses and increase business development opportunities. Please welcome Bruce Kopkin. Bruce is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Data Visualization. DVI is a fast-growing startup providing corporate travel program and spend optimization solutions for companies worldwide. Bruce, for the audience to know you better, please provide just a brief bio for yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Artie. Glad to be here. Myself, I've been in the data and software technology world now, and I hate to say it, for almost 40 years, and always trying to find new ways to do business. The way things have always been done doesn't mean that's the way they need to be moving forward. And then particularly these days with COVID coming on and being such a tremendous change to what's been done, it's really made for exciting times in the world of data analysis. Real quickly for DVI, we've been around about 3 years now already. We're up to about 30 customers and are really driving impactful and sustainable results, both prior to COVID and now moving through COVID. So it's really, really an exciting time.
Well, thank you. You know, when Bruce and I first spoke, and I learned that he works with a company involved in travel and expenses, I said to myself, oh no, not another travel agency. But I quickly learned that DVI is not a travel agency. But I did think of that funny insurance commercial where a guy starts talking about insurance and the woman goes, oh no, not another insurance commercial. And he says, no, we shop all insurance companies and you choose the best one for you. So I learned DVI is not a travel agency, right. It's a data science company. And Bruce, you're going to explain how DVI applies intuitive visualizations to provide a complete overview of a company's travel and expenses that contain and reduce expenses and then creates value from them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So please, there's so much I would like to ask you about the value proposition and to provide insight for the challenges all companies are facing with COVID in particular, as you mentioned. So please take the lead.
Yeah, just as a little bit of background for people that don't know the business travel side of things, not the leisure side, but the business travel side, that's pre-COVID was a $1.7 trillion business. So businesses around the world spent $1.7 trillion on business travel. Many companies spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars per year, some in excess of $1 billion a year. That's getting their salespeople, their service people out to visit customers, going to trade shows, going to internal meetings, all those different things. It's a tremendous amount of money. And the companies want to make sure they're spending that money as wisely as they possibly can. Pre-COVID, we focused mostly on the business spend side of things, making sure that you were negotiating as best you could with your suppliers, how to make sure your policies were done properly, all of those things by bringing in data from many, many different areas, bringing in information from, as Artie said, from the travel agencies. All of these businesses have travel agencies, from their corporate credit cards, from their expense systems, from their ERPs, from their HR systems, bringing all of that data together and using now machine learning and artificial intelligence to go ahead and do all of the hard work that people have been trying to do for years through Excel spreadsheets and pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and all of those very manually intensive, error-prone ways of doing things, so that people can actually have a complete view of what they're doing with their travel on a daily basis. And then they can make wise decisions. As a quick little change of how things have changed in these last 10 to 12 months, whereas before the focus was solely on spend reduction. Now it's also on policy enhancement and on traveler safety. So it's important to know where your people have been, where they are now, and where they're going. You want to make sure they're not in areas where there may be a COVID outbreak, maybe civil unrest, maybe a volcano. All of those things now are much more important than they ever were before. And then all the policies that change. You know, people would prefer to drive in their personal car than to rent a car these days. It just is one small example. How can you use data to make the right decisions for policies to make your travelers feel comfortable and safe? Become much more important these days.
That's interesting. And I learned, speaking with you earlier, about the term of duty of care, which of course applies to COVID in particular now, but it also was a factor before there was COVID, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And in what ways does your data analysis help companies with duty of care?
Yeah, because duty of care, for people that may not know, it's sort of that legal and moral duty that a company has to take care of their employees, not only for a safe workplace, but also while they're traveling. So that's very, very important. It's always been there, just hasn't been front of mind as much as now that COVID has come. Companies had so much work to do back in March on getting people home from places where they were and repatriating them and all of those kinds of things. There are many systems out there that are truly duty of care systems that aggregate information from the World Health Organization and local governments and all those pieces and have that. The piece where we help out is we can match that information with traveler location. So as we said, we know where they've been. So if we need to go back and do any kind of contact tracing, that who has been, in Budapest where there may, now there's a problem, who was there in the last 2 weeks? We can get that information at our fingertips. Where are they today? Where are they going tomorrow? So we can know maybe it's time to cancel the trip or to make those changes. So by marrying traveler location along with all that other information, it makes people feel more comfortable and be safer.
We talked about developing a budget, right? And it's not necessarily just a travel budget, it could be any line expense. So in what ways does data visualization help in creating a budget? You talked about it looks at data from what areas of the company?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the past, I'll just give a little bit historical perspective. Travel budget, which I mentioned before, was a large number. It's typically the number 3, 4, sized indirect spend category for most companies. So it's a pretty good size item.
That is.
But for most people, it was sort of not top of mind. Next year's budget for travel was plus or minus 5% of last year's budget. They just really didn't do much with it. Well, now that's all changing. So if you put yourself in a CFO's hat, and for many of these companies, and this is not the airlines and hotels and restaurants that have been so severely, impacted by COVID, but the other companies, the consumer packaging and food, food and all the other pieces, their business is doing just fine. Well, they've done just fine with 90% less travel than they did before. So just because the vaccine's going to come out and get people feeling better and start to travel more, I don't think the CFOs are going to say, well, we made our revenue numbers at 10% travel budget. I'm going to give you back all your money again. They're going to want to go back and look once again and say, what is that optimum number? How much, will Zoom and WebEx and Teams replace predominantly internal meetings? So how can I save there? But also there's going to be remote employees that are going to need to fly to the offices periodically. That's a new travel spend. Mm-hmm. I've relocated some of my manufacturing facilities to try to onshore them perhaps, or consolidate, so I won't be traveling as much internationally as I did before. You can look at all of that data on a daily basis and see what your new travel patterns are, from where to where, the volumes, and who's traveling. Is that salespeople? Is it service people? Is it manufacturing quality assurance people? And look at that information. And from there, you can run through what if scenarios, true prescriptive analyses to determine what the proper budget should be moving forward. And that's one of the big differences that COVID has made in the world of data. The big thing everybody, you probably heard most people talk about before, was predictive analyses. Well, the definition of predictive analysis is using the past to predict the future. Well, in a lot of things, particularly in this case, travel, the past does not give you any idea of the future. How much I traveled last February doesn't give me any idea how much I'm going to travel this month. You need to have these prescriptive analyses, which are really more like what if scenarios, that'll really give you that idea of, based on what's happening right now, what predictions can I make for the future? And that it really helps around budgets.
Again, DVI is not a travel agency, so companies could still continue with their existing and current, right?
Absolutely.
But in what way does it help with suppliers? I remember talking with you, and having this data insight gives an advantage to a company to deal with providers for expenses. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and obviously, the companies still need their travel agents. They still need a booking tool and agents to call for complex situations. They still need to work with all their suppliers. Suppliers could be the airlines, the rental cars, the black cars, the hotels, all of those sorts of things. But by having all of your information together, when it comes time to negotiate next year's airline contracts, and when you go in to sit down, I live in Atlanta, so you're sitting down, predominantly with Delta, you're going to know exactly who has traveled, where have they traveled, how did they book it, what class were they on. You'll have all that information along with what other things were happening. So perhaps you can make the decisions, well, maybe I should move some more of my travel from American to Delta, and I can negotiate a better discount, with Delta. By having all of that information and not having to make any assumptions, you have more power, more leverage in your negotiations. From the flip side, the suppliers love that also. The airlines, the hotels, et cetera, don't mind giving larger discounts for larger volumes. So if they know that you're going to actually, stay 10,000 nights at their property, not 8,000, that's actually good information for the hotel, and they would gladly, work with you on better pricing to gain that extra market share.
We're running down on time right now, so I want to make sure you get across any points that you had predetermined we should talk about. But one of the things that I want to make sure is you're open to this. This applies to any industry. This is not just an HR issue. This is not just a travel expenses. Any company has expenses and has travel. You can help. Your company can help.
That's correct. For us, it's a horizontal spend. That's just travel spend. So no matter what you're doing, as long as you've got people that have to get on airplanes or stay in hotels or whatever, we can help out with that. And it's absolutely agnostic to your travel agency, to your expense tool, to your ERP, any of those things. We work with all of them. We are truly, an agnostic data aggregator that then cleanses and all of that data to bring it into smart analytics and insights to allow people to make wise decisions in these really quite turbulent times these days. Everything's changing, seems like on a daily basis.
That sounds like a good summary to me, but I just want to make sure if there was any points that we did not cover that you would like to add right now. And then I'd like for you to provide your contact information so anyone interested could reach out to you and data visualization.
Yeah, no, I'll be glad to do that, Artie. I think this is a final comment just for anybody that perhaps travel expense and traveler safety and those things. As you're starting to think about those things now is really the time to start thinking about it. Most companies believe that we're going to start beginning a more increased return to business travel in mid-year. Right now, it's averaging 15, 16, 17% of pre-COVID levels. Most companies think that it'll start increasing, in the June, July timeframe, and that by the end of the year, we'll be at about 50% of historic levels. Now is the time to get your data and all those pieces, set for that return, so that, when people start going, you'll be able to make them feel comfortable beforehand. You'll be able to change your policies in a proactive manner and all the necessary things to be ready for that return to travel. So now's the time to start thinking about what is hopefully we all believe going to start happening in the next numbers of months.
And if they're thinking about it and want to reach out to you and data visualization, how do they do that?
Yep, great. Once again, name was Bruce Kopkin, and the email address is bkopkin@dvibigdata.com, or you can just give me a phone call at 770-330-9867. That's my cell phone, and between keeping that in my pocket, on my wrist, you can reach me anytime.
How about helping us with the spelling of Kopkin?
Kopkin, Kopkin. So
thank you.
Yep,
thank you, Bruce. And we'll be signing off. And I just want to reach out there and remind everyone to keep developing your business.